So I want to thank our sponsors, Pro Photo Daily and Epson, B&H, Photo Shelter, and American Photography. So tonight we have Gus Bennett, who's here from New Orleans to show us a whole bunch of work that, is really, really great. And I'm totally excited to have him. And a shout out to J.R. Thompson for helping us out and making it all work. So with that, Gus, it's all yours.
Good everyone. My name is Gus Bennett. Good to be here. So I'm going to go through a few of my images, most of which started right after Hurricane Katrina. I started most of my projects under the title The New Orleans People Project. And right now it's kind of evolved to at least about 20, 25 different projects, all underneath the same umbrella of the New Orleans People Project. We did rings in my mother's house, and I'll show some of each one of the projects and see and show you how it evolved out of my street photography. Every one of the projects is a off branch of my street photography work. And most of my talks tonight is going to be about how street photography, when you approach it from a different angle, changing the perspective both mentally and mechanically. And when I say mechanically, I mean using lenses that may or may not be suited for portrait photography. Like right now, most of my street photography is done with a 12 millimeter lens and a 17 millimeter lens. And I use wide angle perspectives because I'm not concerned with the left or the right side of the frame. I never flip my camera to vertical mode. So it allows me to see a very expansive view of the streets and the people that's in front of me. And it also gives me the opportunity to work really close. I have this idea that street photography is better when you're in close proximity to the people that you're shooting. I never want to shoot anything as a voyeur or on the fringes of the activity. I like to get right in there. I'm always within 5 to 7 feet of everybody that I photograph, and I'm able to talk to them and create a rapport with them. And this outfit you see me with, this shirt, I wear the same thing. I do it because it's psychology. One of my earlier mentors said the quickest way to get close with a group of people is show up and look the same way. And you're going to create an identity with that group where they see you as the same person. She said, never dress more or more elaborate than the people you're photographing. But that's kind of hard in New Orleans because everybody show up at second lines and they're looking good. So it's I chose or I'm choosing now to just wear the same thing. So when I show up at a second line, I give people the same impression. I've eliminated my gear down to one camera. And I do that because my brain now knows the width of a 17 millimeter lens when I'm standing 5 feet in front of you. So as I'm approaching, I know exactly the cutoff points. I know the width of that lens, and I'm able to use it much more effectively when my brain has now been trained to see the world in a 17 millimeter perspective. And a 12 millimeter lens, I'm using that usually from ground level. And I'll tell you about some of the issues I've been having with the 12 millimeter lens from ground level. It actually made me passed out. I passed out twice. It's always temporary, always for about, 30 seconds. It's serious when you're on the street passing out. And, so I won't talk anymore. I'll start going through everything.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, just Gus, just t tell everyone the comment that your mom had as it relates to shooting people.
So when I was really young, I've been in photography for so long, I couldn't tell you exactly how old I was, but I know I was in grade school. And my mom, this was the precursor to her going to, she has a master's degree in theology. And early in my career, when I asked my mom to get a camera, mothers is really amazing people. She didn't hesitate in buying me the camera. She took my dad's credit card and maxed it out. I mean, really maxed it out. I remember it being a big argument in the house. And I had to be about 6, 7 years old, and it was a Bronica ETRS, Broncolors, and I didn't know how to use those flash units, so I never touched them. She bought them a Nota flash meter, just all of the professional gear, because when she went there, the professionals told her what to buy. They thought she was buying for an older person. And she walked into the kitchen, put all of the equipment on the table. And my mom speaks in the third person. She said, Mama can't help you. Uh, so just take the camera and go shoot. Go outside in the garden and start shooting. Now, the key word in that whole statement is the garden first. And I said, Mom, I went out there and shot a few pictures. I didn't really like shooting in the garden. And I came back and said, Mom, I don't like shooting in the garden. So she said, well, go get some people and put them in there and then shoot again. And keep in mind, we had a very small garden, so that was almost impossible. But the thing that she said that was profound now, because I was too young to understand then, she said God had to be a photographer because the first thing he said or did was turn on the lights. He said, let there be light. And a very core component of photography is light. And I've told that story so many times, it's almost like embedded in me. And one of the things that I learned how to do before I knew how to take a picture, I knew how to light things. I would take my grandmother's styrofoam mannequin heads and I would sit it next to a window and I took a marker and I would mark lines as the sun went across the sky. It showed it had a different reaction coming in the window. And every hour I put another mark on it and I wouldn't touch it. And the next day I'll see if the shadow was in the same spot. And sure enough, at the same time, the shadow was falling in the same spot. So I knew that light was predictive. It had a color temperature. I didn't know anything about color temperature, but I knew that when I looked at it, it had a different color temperature to it and a different color hue because I was shooting Polaroids at the time as well. And I started putting all of these little things together. I'm a detail-oriented person. I record everything. I still have journals from way back when. And I do that because um, sometimes you can make a mistake. I call it a happy accident. We all make the happy accidents in photography. But another mentor, John Scott, he said, the difference between a mistake and a technique is one of them can be repeated with predictable results. So if you write things down, then you can go back and say, it turned out wrong, but it looked good. And because it looked good and I wrote down the information, I can now repeat that. And so a lot of the techniques that I use now came out of happy accidents or experimental processes. And because I wrote it down and I still have the journals now, I can go back and repeat it. So with
Great.
that said, you'll see a lot of the images, the organic watermarks is pure experimental, but I can repeat it. I mean, like pop is predictable to me and is very layered. Some of them have as many as 82 individual images inside of one frame. And that came out of Hurricane Katrina. And as they come up, I'll explain it to you.
Okay, off you
Right.
go.
Give me 1 second. Let's close this out. And man, I'm really excited to be here tonight. You know, this has been I've been waiting for this day. So my photography is a form of resistance and remembrance and rebellion, but I approach it in such a way where you won't even know I'm doing that. And it's my way. I tell people I'm not trying to be famous. I'm trying to stay relevant for a long time. And if you live in New Orleans, most people know me, but I don't make myself readily available to the public a lot. I'm always present shooting. Sometimes they don't. And I like that approach because it gives me the opportunity to get in close and shoot and not get in conversations with people. So that's where this quote came from. A lot of these quotes are not deliberately written like this. I go back through my journal and then they just pop up and I say, oh, well, that's what I was thinking or that's what I said. Right. So this is one of the images from the organic watermarks. I called it this series organic watermarks because what you're seeing is multi-layered Hurricane Katrina debris and the people it's not digital or it's not like AI generated stuff. These are actual images. Some of them are in focus, some of them are out of focus. For example, the middle image, the background, we had a rally in Baton Rouge at the state capitol, and what you're looking at is the marble floor in the building. So as I was navigating myself during Hurricane Katrina, I was recording textures and just compiling stuff. I just thought the texture was beautiful from all of these dead leaves. When we first returned back to the city, the dominant colors was this muddy brown color in the blue sky. And so that's how I get the color scheme. Every now you kind of see little hints of blue coming in. And some of the layers, like the image to the far right, it has newspaper, leaves, it has a painter's drop cloth in it. And so that's what gives it that canvas-like texture. The image in the middle, the leaves that's in front of the little girl, they're all virtual. They're like stripped out off of a wax sheet of paper where I just scratched it and then I scanned it and I used it. And the mask on the first face, it's actually a layered image from a pecan tree. And I just put a drop shadow on it. That's what gave it the 3D effect. And I think I photographed about 250 individuals for this project. It was all done on my front porch. So I'll go to the next one. This is, and again, I'm the first part of my presentation, I'm just giving you highlights from different projects. This is from my street series. Every Sunday in New Orleans, we have second lines, and it's almost like church. People show up, and it's a sacred to me. It's sacred to me, and I feel that when I'm on the street. I mean, it has all of the key phrases from church. Make a joyful noise. The noise is there, you know. And my dad used to always joke. He would leave church and say, "The pastor showed they preached today." And soon as someone would ask him, "Well, what the hell did he say? What did he say?" I don't know, but whatever he said, they jumped real high. And I
Yeah.
remember him joking about that. And I started deliberately looking for people at the second line who jumped real high. That's my version of Humpty Dumpty sitting on the wall. We have this tradition that if a second line pass cemetery, people get on the wall and dance. They celebrate. They bring it's an essence of life back to a city of dead people. Now, if you live outside of the city, if you live outside of New Orleans, a bunch of my friends come in town and say that's disrespectful. And we see it as celebrating life and giving the people who are in those tombs just a vibration, that vibration of someone dancing on the wall or dancing on the top of a crypt. It's just it's a tribute to the life of that person, as that vibration represents life. And every one of these images is just a street portrait that I did. When I shoot, I try to shoot my street photography in an elegant kind of way. If you're curious, if anybody's curious about where my style comes from, I'm a combination of three different photographers. My compositional style comes from a photographer named Platon, Platon. He
Right.
uses really wide angle lenses on a square format camera, namely a Hasselblad, and he gets really close in people's face. Sometimes I'm within 8 inches of a person's face, but it's a really wide, expansive view. The elegance of my pictures comes from James Van Der Zee. James Van Der Zee was known to photograph Black life and Black culture in New York up until the point of death. He even did death photos and he made them look elegant. People showed up in their really beautiful suits. And back then, taking pictures, the way I interpret it, it was a once a year celebration. We saved to come in and take this beautiful picture. It wasn't about giving me 20 proofs and picking the ones I like. It was that one definitive moment. So when I shoot, I try to go back to that one definitive moment. This is what the organic watermark session looked like. Every image was shot on my porch. And it was a way of me giving tribute to my neighbors. This is little Ronald. And it was always a simple approach. Um, the one thing that Hurricane Katrina did to those who lived here and the way it presented us to the world, it quickly divided the haves and the have-nots. So with this session, I decided to make everything simple. Those fabrics that I wrap people in, they're my fabrics. I like collecting mud cloth fabric. And I found that when you put the burlap as the backdrop instead of paper, that extra texture in the background was perfect when you started layering stuff because it created a natural texture for me that looked like a canvas. And what you're actually picking up is the texture of the burlap. And this is all window light. So this is the screen door open, but normally that screen door is closed. We only opened it to take that picture on the left. But normally it's a one-way screen on my porch. So even if I was shooting on the porch and people pass my porch, they could hear us, but they can't see on the porch. And my neighbors would come and just take their pictures. If they went to graduation or their proms, they would come and take their pictures before they go. Uh, all of my projects are community-based projects. I don't charge a single dime. The only thing I tell people, we have to make an agreement that I can not commercialize your image. I won't license any of these images, but we do make them available if someone wanted to purchase them. And if we sell any image from this series, the person in the picture, they get a percentage of the sale. And we tell them exactly how many we print. For the most part, we only printed 50 copies of each image from this particular series.
And Gus, when did you realize, or when did you know that you had to do something in regards to Katrina?
Immediately, because
Immediately.
I had it was twofold. I was working at a university as a public relations photographer. I was working at Southern University, and I was also expecting my son, and he's a Katrina baby. And me and my ex-wife, or my wife at the time, I left the city and came back, and she left the city. She ended up in, I think, Stafford, Texas, but she was desperately trying to get back to New Orleans because she wanted his birth certificate to have New Orleans on it and not Texas. And
Mm.
every time I got word she was in this place, I went there and she had moved, and we eventually caught up with each other. But when my son was born, I wasn't in New Orleans, and it was about could have been up to 3 days after he was born. I knew immediately that I had to do some kind of special tribute project because there was so much destruction. And the very first project that I started was Tell My Feet I Made It Home. And it was my feet. I just kept photographing my feet because I said, I don't want to ever show my son the effects of this storm. That storm was terrible. I stayed. I never left. I tend to stay for storms because I want to be around firsthand. And soon as everything starts clearing up, I want to be there taking pictures. So I photographed my feet. It was a simple attempt to tell my story from the journey of my feet. And that's how I came up with the title, Tell My Feet I Made It Home. It's also the title of a song by a singer that I like named Vinx, Vinx. And the song, if I can remember right, it's Tell My Feet I Made It Home. If on a mountain I can stand and see and look beyond the roads where I've been. I think it says, it's an endless street. Now I'm hoping from where I am, could I believe what my heart knew all along? Tell my feet I made it home. So I kept playing that song over and over. It was that song and a song by a guy named Greg Osby. And everyone that's listening to me right now, all of these songs are on YouTube. I don't get any money from it, but go and listen to it. It was
Okay.
Greg Osby, and the song was called Like So, Likeso. I fell in love with that song so much that it was my password for years. So it was, you know, and it was the song to me sounded like a baby being born. And when you listen to the song, he was playing a saxophone, and you can hear the arrival of the family at the hospital in the song. It's not a family, it's just notes that sound like people arriving, expecting something to happen. And it's high and it's low, and then it settles down when when what I thought was the mother going into labor, and then after you hear the celebration of this sound through the saxophone. And so much of my time for Katrina was spent in isolation with my camera, listening to music, creating projects, because I knew at some point we were going to celebrate this. We were going to get past this because we always do in the city. The city is so resilient. No matter what happens, I think if they dropped a nuclear bomb on New Orleans, we're going to still return, and there's still going to be a second line. And if humans are not dancing, the ghosts and the spirits here are going to do it for us. I do believe that with all my heart.
All right.
So this is those low angle shots. Initially, I had no problem shooting these low angle shots. And again, now you see why I shoot with a 12 mm lens, because I can get really close and I can cut the edges off. And I still have a lot of real estate inside of the frame, and it gives me a lot of options. In addition to the feet now becoming, or the boots now becoming the dominant character or the actual subject of this photo, I can still see the police officer standing to the right, and I can see the folks who show up for the second line standing on the left. So it still gives me enough information. This is my friend Carol. Carol cuts up all the time. I love her. And I added a hint of sepia and color to this as well. And all of my color is coming from layered images. It's just a matter of taking a color layer, blending it in, and then changing the opacity of the frame and this layer. I think if you think of it like a sandwich with holes in it, that's how I work my images, right? And recently I've been working on a project in Selma, Alabama. It's called Selma is More Than a Bridge. And I have a rule when I visit places. When I first visited Selma almost 3 years ago, I didn't photograph the Edmund Pettus Bridge because that's what people do. They go to Selma, Alabama, they walk that bridge, they take pictures, and then they leave. They don't leave anything of their personal real estate. They don't leave any of their own conscious in the place. It's like people come and take and they don't leave anything. And I decided I wasn't going to photograph that bridge, and I didn't. I only started photographing that bridge when they celebrated, they call it the Jubilee. And I shot the 59th year. Last year was the 60th anniversary. I know it was this year, the 60th anniversary. So I shot those two. And it's just, these are men from the local Masons organizations crossing that bridge. Again, go ahead.
Yeah, so not to interrupt, but it seems to me, Gus, that so much of what you shoot comes from thinking
Yes,
and words. It's not just going out and shooting. You're going with a mission.
yes, yes. So when I go to the street, I'll take it from New Orleans first. So when I go on the street, it's never random. Again, I had plenty mentors. A mentor told me excellence should never be pursued randomly. If you have a random pursuit to excellence, you're not going to ever get there because you're not being deliberate and intentional about what you're doing. So when I go out to street shoot on the street, no matter what city I'm in, I listen first because the city will tell you how it should be photographed. And Selma initially told me, don't photograph me. New Orleans is quite different because New Orleans is always loud, it's always celebrating, but it's always sacred. No matter what sound is coming from the streets of New Orleans, there's always a level of sacredness to it. And if you're feeling it, you can actually see it in an invisible spirit-like way, and it will kind of dictate to you how to photograph. It even tells you how to walk, how to approach people. Um, so I'm always listening, and reading keeps me in tune to how to see the world. I write a lot. I think I write more than I take pictures. And
Mm,
then once I write it down, I document it in an audio format as well. So I have what I write in the rough draft, the typed version, and the audio file. And it's both for me and my son. All of that stuff is for my son. I only have one child, and I'm giving it all to him. And it hopefully he can go through my archives and figure out this is who your dad was. My entire life has been spent taking pictures and documenting other people. Um, people tell me all the time, why don't you show the world who you are? Because I'm like a vampire. I don't like getting in pictures because it's not about me, it's about what I do. And if you look, anytime you see a picture with someone looking into my camera, if you zoom in on it close enough, you will always see me in their eyeball. I'm always there because I'm usually within 8 inches of their face. So I end up as a reflection in their eyes. And I'll talk about that later as well.
So, Gus, I mean, every time you shoot and you come back, I mean, this is an emotional experience in a very deep way.
Yes. When you come back, you have to decompress. And I've learned, let me show you something right quick. Gerald, do me a favor. You see that image right there? If you can grab that one right there. I tend to have a cup of coffee, and even having a cup of coffee is a simple way of saying, okay, you're going to relax. And once I have that cup of coffee, and this is in no way trying to promote this coffee, because in and of itself, it's a piece of paper. After I drink the cup of coffee, I print the image on the actual used coffee filter. That's it right there. And if I was to open this frame, you could still smell the coffee because there's a hole in the back of it right now in the paper, and I can smell the coffee while I'm holding it. So
Mm.
this is my way of decompressing, relaxing, because if you shoot a second line, most second lines take about 4 hours, and it's you're losing weight, you're doing a lot of things. It's nonstop. It's I've been passing out lately. We're still trying to figure out what that health issue is, but it's an equilibrium issue with me when I shoot low angles and I pop up too quick. I pass out. I go out for about 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and then I'm back. And so it's very intense. And when I'm shooting second lines, if you was to look at me, I look like a Terminator because most of the time I'm standing and my eyes are going up, down, left, right. I'm not shooting movement. One of the things I found, and this is in no way to say anything negative about other photographers because we all have our own shooting styles, but a lot of photographers at second lines, they shoot movement, and everybody tends to attack that movement if it's good, and most of the time it's good, but they all attack that same area of movement and they all end up with the same shot, and in most cases it's beautiful. I tend to do the opposite. If the action is on the left, I'm standing on the right. If it ends up on the right, I go to the left, and if they split it down the middle, I stand in the middle, and I'm always opposite, so I'm always ending up with something completely different. This image is of a gentleman, we call him Scubble. His name is Roderick. And I call him the footwork king. And on his social media, they call him King Scubble. And this is for a campaign that we did for a series that came in town that was just highlighting some photographers. I'll send you the link to that in a few weeks or so. And this was his mental preparation before he started dancing. He just set his hat down. When I told him about the image, I wanted it to appear as if he popped out of his hat, did his dance, and then fell back into his hat, picked it up, and walked off. So I have the entire sequence. It's not just these two images. He walks into the frame, takes off his hat, and he pops out, he dances, and then he pops back in, And then with this, it went to from street dancing to studio dancing. This next image you'll see pretty much the same effect. It's that sacredness of the dance. And she's completely dressed, but she had like a tube top and some shorts on. So I told her, just lean forward, and it made the clothes disappear. And I wanted her to look more like a flower and a dancer at the same time. To get that extreme color scheme, because I learned how to use light and I was always mindful of the temperature of light, I found that when I add a blue filter to my images, it makes black skin that was heavy with melanin, it turned dark. Uh, People used to spray paint bodies like that to get that effect. And I still do that myself, but I found this is a quicker way to get that same blackened effect, and you'll see it here also. She's not spray painted, but when you drop in that blue filter, it
Mm.
darkens the skin. And if you keep your eye on this image. Remember the right image, because the next image that's coming up, you're gonna see the same motion that's mimicked. And here she was more of a classical dance and a hip hop kind of vibe. This is my friend Michelle Gibson. She's amazing. And we were trying to work together for years. And then when I did my residency at the Joe Mitchell Center, she showed up one day and we spent the whole day just shooting and just creating these magical moments with window light. And you'll see that same basic motion showing up here. Now, this is my throwback again to the Hurricane Katrina organic watermark. Um, because I read a lot of stuff, there was a book that I read called Picturing Us. And Picturing Us was a discussion with different essays on from different how Black faces were being profiled. And one of the essays that I remembered was a gentleman, he was a waiter in New Orleans, and he had on a black suit that looked like a tuxedo, a clean white shirt, and he was arrested because they said he looked suspicious. Now keep in mind, this was back in the 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s when that photo was taken. And when I looked at the man, he was beautiful. Beautiful suit, well pressed, clean white shirt, but the picture was being presented as a mugshot. It was a mugshot. And
Mm.
the goal, they said he looked suspicious. Somebody called him in because he was so dressed and looking good. And they said he was suspicious. And so that's why you see the second image in slight camouflage with stuff that's hiding his face, making him more obscured. Again, I have multiple projects that I work on all the time. And in my head, it makes sense to have 10, 15, 20 projects going on at the same time. This image on the right came out of a series or an interpretation of a series that I did called Suspicious Black Men. And the title alone will catch people attention because the first question is why are they suspicious? And I love when people ask me that question, and the answer is society made it that way for whatever
Mm.
reason, that when Black men, either singly or in groups, no matter what profession, no matter what they have, someone will always see them as a suspicious entity moving into a space. So when you see these two images, you see them as these suspicious, and you see them both being obscured, their faces are hidden. You see them, but they're doing just all they're doing is dancing, on the street, right? And you
Mm.
can stop me at any time if there's a question that comes in.
Yeah, everyone knows they can put that in the chat room. So what determines if you've got 10 or 20 projects going, what determines in the morning, I'm going to do this today? Is it a weather thing? Is it you've arranged something that I'm going to do this, I'm going to work on this project today. And is it each day it could be something different, Gus? Or
Well,
is it, like a
the,
week?
so the majority of my shooting comes from the Sunday second lines. And when I go out on the street, I've already told myself the categories that I'm looking for.
Mm.
Some of the categories, if I go to a second line the day after it rained, I'm always looking at the puddles of water because I'm always shooting images from the puddles of water. I always shoot it, then I turn it upside down. I'm always looking for images with people with hats. You'll see it in the next photo. Give me a second. It's coming up in a second. Let's see. This one. Now, if you look at these two pictures, the messaging is completely different. The one on the left looks like, even though you don't see this guy's face, there's an assumption that he's a Black guy. There's a no loitering sign, and he's just waiting in a long line to get into the store. The line is out there because the second line is passing. And usually when the second line passes, there's a lot of people going in the store and getting water. I just kind of saw this image. It wasn't scripted. He was just there waiting. And I saw the no loitering over his head. And this gentleman shows up at second line. completely dressed up all the time. But when you combine his suit, his hat with that no lawyer, it changes the messaging of it. So that's one of the categories. Another category is, for example, how high someone can jump. I'm always looking at feet. And this is from the Tell My Feet. This is another component of it. New Orleans have tons of memorable streets, real famous streets, and I've tried to photograph someone dancing on the name or near the name of every one of our major streets. These are very old streets and they have the names on it. So when I see it, you have to make a split decision. So as soon as you're passing, because the second line is not going to stop.
Yeah,
And
wait, Gus, if you could explain to us what second line is.
okay, let me see if I can get it right. And I'm doing this from my understanding of it. So second lines come about doing funerals or other celebrations. There's the procession going down the street, and when it's leaving, when they're taking a person to their final resting place, it's a slow movement. They call it like a dirge. We're taking our time to get there. It's the family, it's the band, and then there's the revelers, the family, the rest of the support crew. And the second line, if my understanding serves me well, it's that second group, which is the family that follows the band. And I could be wrong. So if someone is listening and I'm wrong, just type it in and correct me. Um, but it's usually the band and the family, the immediate family members, and the family member denotes the second line that's coming up.
Okay.
And as they're moving down the street, in New Orleans, we celebrate death. We celebrate not the death itself, but we celebrate the existence of someone's life. And I'm the same way. I just pulled it up. Often, though, originally to have, let's see, it's a secondary group or participant in each parade behind the band. So I got it right. It's the group that's coming up behind the band and behind the family.
And they're called the second line. Okay.
Yes. And once that person is put in the ground or in their final resting place, we celebrate. And it's a biblical reference also that we celebrate a person's life and we dance, we cut up, and we should mourn a person that's born into this world because the world is a terrible place. But we don't fear it. We still celebrate life here in this city. And the street, when I pass different streets, I see the shoes hanging off of the line and it to me it still fits in the tell my feet I made it home. I don't know if the guy died. I don't know if that's usually when you see shoes on a line like that, it's an indication that some drugs are being sold in that area. Now maybe the meaning has changed, but these shoes struck me differently because they were military boots. So
Mm.
when I saw it, it immediately made me pause, and I just kind of was trying to imagine who owned it and why are they up there. Maybe it
Yeah,
was,
we
go ahead.
we we did a different version of the lines with our sneakers in Brooklyn.
Yeah, yeah. So this series is something new that I started about in the last 5, 6 months. I started shooting homeless individuals. I was just telling a story about the homeless encampment and how our city tries to make them disappear. I mean, we treat our homeless like Ralph Ellison's Invisible Men sometimes. We
Mm.
just want them to disappear because it's there's this tradition. My mother, I'll go from my perspective with my mother. When company comes over, everybody goes into clean up the damn house mode. Pick that up,
Mm.
clean the house. We got company coming, and it
Yeah.
better be spotless. So in New Orleans, we go through that a lot. We just had a major cleanup for Super Bowl, and all of our homeless disappeared. But they're not gone. They just shuffled them around.
Yeah.
If I had to say one thing I hate about my city, that's it. Because it's also biblical where it says the homeless will always be among us. We will always have homelessness. No matter what we try to do, will always be that, and we should always look out for them, not not take care of them because some people that I encountered want to be out there. They feel liberated. They don't feel like they're under the watchful eye of the government. So after talking to some people on the street, they want to be out there, but there are some people who desperately need help. So I went out with a white seamless portable background. The background was to isolate the world and just make them normal again. In this particular, these two young kids, this was Mardi Gras Day. And I just went out with a background because I didn't want to shoot traditional Mardi Gras photos this year. I wanted something different. And I just put the background up and I didn't say a word. And people started coming to me and said, "What are you doing?" And my answer is, "I'm taking your picture. What are you going to do with it? I'm going to give it to you." So I'm also taking these pictures with the white background and I'm going to put them together because there's another narrative I'm trying to create. How no matter how much we see ourselves in a diverse kind of way, if I put people against a white background, I can shuffle them around. A couple of years back, they did a project in New Orleans, I mean, in New York, where they had total strangers. They asked them to hug each other or would they take a picture together. Mine is slightly different because I can really move people around. I can put the governor, for example, with a homeless person. That will make a statement if I can do that because one is not looking out for the other and maybe they never see each other. Under no circumstances I think our governor would ever be photographed next to a homeless person, but through this project I can put people together who wouldn't normally be together.
So, Gus, that's sort of interesting. I mean, that takes real mental discipline. It's Mardi Gras. The place is, jumping in every different direction, and you're doing portraits against white,
Yes.
right? I mean, like, is there a moment where you look over your shoulder and say, "Oh, what am I doing? This is like there's other stuff over there that's great too." I mean, like, but once you're focused, you're locked in. This is what I'm doing.
Well, you get locked in, but people also lock into you. They see you and
Mhm.
they wait their turn and they will come up. In this case, I was set up near a venue called the Backstreet Museum, real popular venue. And we had Mardi Gras Indians on Black masking Indians on that corner as well. And one of the chiefs, the Black masking Indian chief this year was his last year, and his grandson, I think his grandson was coming out to take his place. So that was the perfect corner for me to just
Mm.
wait. And it wasn't by invitation. It was if you see me come over, I will photograph any and everybody. And when you don't make the announcement, it becomes more organic. I don't pass out business cards because I don't want it to feel like a business exchange is happening. And so when you go around with the white background, you just set it up. I've done it in so many places in the city. And it works because people come to you, and now that creates the dialogue. They're asking you, "What are you doing?" And that's how the dialogue starts. Again, these are the image on the left, that image on the left, that was one of those moments where I kind of blinked out. And that was the last time I was taken from this location to the hospital in an ambulance because of that low angle. And when I get that low, I pop up too quick and I tend to, my equilibrium goes off. I don't shoot that shot anymore. It changes something with my eyes, the way I see it, and it just throws my balance off. And it makes my
Yeah, it could be high blood pressure. We had Dr. Robert Rips jumped in there and suggested that you may have a low blood pressure.
well, it was low blood pressure, and that tends to happen when that whatever it is occurred because they ran the test, they couldn't find anything. But when the guy took my blood pressure, his exact words, "Mr. Bennett, your pressure is perfect." And all I
Okay.
heard was the word perfect, and I knew, hey, is that right? It dropped. So when he took it, it was in that range where it looked like it
Mm.
was perfect. And it probably was high when I passed out.
Well, certainly Dr. Rips, the next time he's in New Orleans, he will look you up because he does visits
Perfect, perfect,
and he'll stop in on the house.
perfect. I look forward to seeing him. So sepia tone is my way of interpreting new images to make them look old. My dad was an avid photographer, and he had a lot of sepia tone images. The irony of those images, I never saw those images while my dad was alive. My dad was in the military. And when I took over my grandmother's house, it was his the house that he was born in. when I remodeled the place, I opened the wall and there was an ammunition chest in the wall with family photos. I still don't know the history of these photos. I still
Wow.
have no context to these photos. I see my father. That's when I saw my grandfather, his father, in those photos for the first time ever. He was Honduran and he was beautiful, man, really tall. You can tell in the pictures that he was tall. And on his merchant seaman ID, it said he was 6'3". And that was my first time seeing it. And I fell in love with this sepia tone. And it just took me to a place that I never visited in life. I wasn't there physically, but something, the spirit in me went to those places in those photos. So I started turning my photos into these sepia toned interpretations and
Mhm.
simple. Make a new image look old so people can stay with it longer. Because when we think we're looking at something old or we found something of value, we tend to look at the picture longer. Like if I had this particular image that's on the screen, if it was in color, in New Orleans, we see this all the time. We see the color of this particular shot all the time, and it's impressive in color, but people don't stay with it. They flip through it so quick. But when I strip out the color, this is a member with the Zulu Social Aid and Pleasure Club, and they tend to stay with the image longer. So I'll just pause for a moment and I'll go through a sequence of images. Uh, the picture on the left is from a series of images, again, taken from street photography. It's called Movement of the People. And I parked the camera, meaning I put the camera on some stationary object or a tripod, and I walk away from it and trigger it with a remote control, or I'll trip it with my hand, but I'm not looking at the people walking through the frame. And when they think they're not being photographed, they're just walking through this frame or dancing through the frame. And this is a mural on a really popular street in the city. And I just call this the watchful eyes. And I love it. I love it. And this image made me start a new project with AI. I'm curious with AI how AI interprets things. And if anybody want to test the theory, um, take an image that you created and drag it into whatever AI software you're using. And AI has a bias. Like I dropped this image and it's clear it's three black men, but when it printed this image, it changed them to three white guys and it changed Jesus dramatically. And so I started doing my own personal investigation and exhibition project that I'm working on, the bias of AI, how it looks at something, and the only way it sees a person as a black person, if you make it so underexposed where they look like a silhouette or a cutout, that's the only way it gets it right and it interprets them as a black person. And I found that odd because I'm also an educator. And when I had my kids engaging with the AI software and that bias came up, and it just kind of opened up a huge discussion about AI and its interpretive value for people of color. Right. The image on the right side was from my Hurricane Katrina series called Quarantine Moments. And if you notice, a lot of my angles, because one of the things I said I wanted to talk about tonight was how taking a simple image and changing the perspective of it. I shot that image on the right like that because photographing kids on on any occasion is always taboo. And when I approached the mother of this young girl, I said, "Can I photograph your young daughter?" And she immediately looked at me like, "For what? And why are you looking at her?" And those are logical questions, and those are questions that I expect from a mother. Um, and if they don't ask me those questions, I tend not to photograph the person because it tells me there's something else that I should be cautious of. Because if a person just give me, sure, go ahead and take her picture, not ask any questions of me, I tend to leave the picture alone. And you'll
Mhm.
see how I'm using these crazy angles. It's not raining in the second shot. The little girl has a her brother had a hose and he was making rain over her, and that was the rainfall, the drops falling from the garden hose. And it was quarantine moments because they couldn't play close together, and everybody was so isolated with each other, right? The image on the left, and again, I have all of these categories that I try to satisfy when I'm on the street doing second line photography. This is from a category called Puff Puff Pass. And anytime I see someone smoking anything, I usually shoot the picture with the 12 millimeter lens, and I'll say, the next time you blow smoke off of that joint or that cigarette, blow it directly into my camera. And I'm usually within 3 to 4 inches of their face. And every time I shoot that picture, someone is always watching, and people always photograph me photographing them, and they send me the picture. And people walk up to me and say, "Could I see that photo that you just did?" This is the series where people are always curious because usually see me with my head covered in smoke and a guy or a woman just blowing smoke directly into my camera. And I love it. I never get a high. I've never received a contact high from it yet, but I find it interesting.
So, Gus, I mean, where you live lends itself to all these wonderful characters and circumstance and events almost every weekend, right? I
Yes.
mean, there's always something going on.
Now, I'll give you a warning. If you ever came to New Orleans and called somebody a character dude, you're gonna be in trouble.
Ah, okay. Thanks, thanks for saving my ass right away.
So, New Orleans is full of so many amazing people, and I'll say this about New Orleans. New Orleans is a place that even if you was poor, culture will make you feel rich. And poverty is expressed differently here because culture makes us feel so rich, we don't realize the level of poverty. Katrina exposed that level of poverty. I think most people didn't know what was going on here when you saw all these people on the rooftop crying for help. But at the end of the day, no matter what goes on in the city, culture always keeps it together. And this was a gentleman, I passed him up on a bike, and he was free spirited. And I remember this building that was 3 blocks ahead of him. So I caught up with him. I said, "Hey, there's a church coming up with a cross over the door. I want to photograph you when you get in front of that space." And he agreed. He shook his head. And I said, "Well, stop for a moment. I'm going to turn the car around and then I'm going to ride with you." I got in the passenger seat. Someone was driving, and that's how we captured this photo. And I just wanted his head to be right underneath the cross on this particular building.
How many shots did you take for that, Gus?
So when we shot it, it was whizzing by at about 8 frames a second. So I started shooting him at the corner, and then I kept shooting until he passed the building up. So on the left side of the building where you see the gate, that's where I stopped shooting. And on the right side of the building, that's where I started. So in that space, we had a lot of images compressed because my car was moving, he was moving, and I didn't want the timing to be off. So I told him we're going to do the sequence as soon as he gets into that space. And it worked
You
out.
know, yeah, Stefan Falker has an interesting comment that the photographs that you have complement each other. Is that you doing that, on your own? Do you collaborate with anyone? What do you think? Or
So when I put it, go ahead. I
no,
didn't.
no, no. You got really the question. Is there any kind of collaboration? What's the process that you go through to team these images up? Just in general.
So when I put these two images together, the smoke represent spirit to me. It was that transitioning and the fact that I could see his face and not see his face. He's transitioning inside of that smoke that's either putting him on a new high or a different high. And I
Mm.
saw that I combined that with that cross. That cross sticks out like a sore thumb against not his body, but the hat and his face. That was a deliberate attempt to make that slightly underexposed because the picture was darker and I was able to pull it up, but I underexposed it so I knew I would have a really dark face that merged with that hat. So as I pulled the levels up on the image, I knew the cross would come up and stick out on its own. And to combine these two images together, they're both in a moment of spirit. One is on a bike,
Mm,
he's just, in his own space, reflecting on whatever he's reflecting. Because even when he told me I could take his photo, he never spoke it, he just nodded his head. And
mm.
the guy on the left, I mean, he came so close to me, and that was the intent. And I just saw it as a release of spirit and, whatever it is that's making him high. And it worked to me, the composition together worked.
And what format are you capturing these images on?
So here's the trickery, and I'll tell you the story. Um, I'm shooting with a Canon, a 6D and a 5D, but you'll see the framing on it is a Hasselblad frame. I do that again. The 17 and the the 17 millimeter and the 12 millimeter lens gives me the freedom to see the world really, really wide. So when I'm shooting, I'm isolating that square content, and I
Mm,
can see what's coming into the frame. I'm never caught off guard because it's so wide. I can see the action as it's happening outside of this square line and the box. So I shoot a square because I don't have to do this. I don't want that extra second on the street to make that determination if it's vertical or horizontal. And I find when I shoot vertical, you lose a lot of the action. A lot of the action on the street is the reaction of people. The image on the right is from that white background series. We shot that at the Contemporary Art Center, and the one on the left is like a wire mesh face mask with a spray painted face on it, and that was shot on Mardi Gras. Again, these images were put together because I thought they worked together. I liked the eye of the gentleman on the right complementing the eyes on the left, and to me, they just look like they belong together. You'll see that kind of the James Van Der Zee, what I was telling, James Van Der Zee influences me a lot. I do believe that second line photography can be elegant, and that was what I was pushing for when I shot the picture on the right. Uh, this was in the last hour of that second line. In the entire second line, he kept saying, "Hey, can we take the picture now? Can we take the picture now?" I knew exactly where I was going to shoot it because it was one of the stops, and I liked that stop because it looked like a throwback neighborhood. It had the old store with the writing on the wall and the people in front of the store, and that's why I shot it there. And this was during the winter months. Uh, Fur was the thing this year. Everybody had on some kind of fur outfit, and I just thought it was perfect. The gentleman on the left, he's standing next to a barbecue pit. And when we started shooting the picture, the pit was closed. And for whatever reason, the guy grilling opened the grill and the smoke came out. And so the guy in the photo closed his eye because the smoke was getting in his eyes. And I said, "Are you okay?" And that's the signal he gave me. But that signal is almost iconic of saints that do that. When you see a saint and they're sitting and doing that, and when he did that, it just looked reminiscent of a sacred moment to me.
mm. And are you shooting black and white and color, or just color
So
all the time and then you convert?
I shoot color, and if I presented every one of these images in color, they're amazing in color. I chose, or I made the conscious choice to present work in black and white because I wanted it to immediately stand out. And then I created this extra layer of the sepia tone. If you look at these images, you can't mark the time with these images. They're already vintage images. And some of them are, I shot some of them within the last 3 months, within the last 6 months. Some of them may be only 3 weeks old, but as soon as you see it, they're
Yeah,
timeless automatically. And
they
again,
become period pieces. Yeah.
this is another shot from the puff puff pass moment. Right. This is Kabuki. He reminds me of Dizzy Gillespie. He's
Yeah.
amazing at the trumpet. This is something I think only happens in New Orleans. It's illegal. After I got home after the second line there, it had to be at least 5 or 6 laws broken. You cannot climb up on the crossover on the railroad tracks. And those individuals got up there and they were just dancing. It was all innocent to them, but it was still against the law. And I think that was the last time it happened. And and the next time the second line passed there, if you
Why
got
would that be against the law, Gus? I don't understand.
because
I know.
it's dangerous.
Yeah.
It looks stable, but when you see it in person, it's flexing. It's
Oh, is that right? Okay.
It's Boeing, and it's part of what keeps the trains from running into each other. So if someone gets up there and break that, you have a problem because the trains pass there all the time in the middle of a neighborhood. This is one of those statements from my mom, you know, just be ready for the moment. It's coming. Stop looking for stuff. It's everything that you need to shoot at a second line or anywhere else is already out there. I think sometimes we photograph images from our memory. We say, oh, I saw a shot like that. I want to create the same moment. I'm only looking at the categories, but I'm not looking for a particular shot to fit a category, if that makes sense.
Mm,
The one rule that I do have when I'm shooting on the street, if my brain has already seen a particular moment or a particular person doing a particular dance, I don't shoot it. And I say it's nice. I commit it to memory, and the memory of that person dancing makes me wait even longer to photograph them because there's no sense in constantly creating stock footage of the same motion, the same movement of the same person doing the same thing.
Here's a question for you. Um, Blaze had, in regards to your pairings, very impressive. Do you print both frames on the same sheet of paper?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
do. Okay.
So, and what I can do, because a lot of people ask me, it's a preset that I made in Lightroom. I can send that preset to you and we can put it up so anybody that wants to download it can download it. And it allows because I'm shooting square on a rectangular format, it allows for adjustments. Because if I'm shooting a square, the square is very intentional if it starts off as a square. So if my composition is off, I'm locked inside of that square. And the only way to change it is to move in on it because I can't pull out. But if you're shooting on a rectangular and you're only taking the square out, now you have the flexibility to move this way and also the flexibility to compress it down. So it becomes that's what these images represent. It's the same square, it's the same 17 millimeter lens. But let's say hypothetically, I got the 3 kids in the shot wrong. I can shift my composition left or right, and I can even pull it out to make room for them to fit inside. Right? The shot on the left, sorry, I'm explaining an image that's not visible yet. Okay, so now you see it. I had 2 images on my screen. Sorry about that, everybody.
That's right. How often?
So you'll see this compositional framing. It gives me flexibility to move things around, even though it's a square. Because now, if I flip my camera to a vertical perspective, there's only one thing I can do. I can go up on the square, which doesn't make sense because it doesn't offer any improvement to the composition. You're actually taking the people out. So by doing it this way, I can shift that compositional element or that compositional framing around. The image on the far left, that's with the 12 millimeter lens, and you can almost see the shadow of my foot in the middle of the frame. That's how close I am to these kids.
Mm,
I call them the Tropicana cowboys. They were on their break drinking their little Tropicana pouches.
mm.
And
And
so
how often do you go out to shoot for your art?
every Sunday,
Every Sunday.
every day at home, I'm working on a different project. So I'll go through this. This is the Black Code series. And even though the Black Code series is an indoor project, it started from the street. I met every one of these people on the street And I just asked the question. New Orleans is very forgiving and we're generous, sometimes to a fault. It's you ask a person, can I take your picture? And they will say yes. They're gonna ask you two questions. For what? And can I get a copy? And if you're if they know you, you have a higher chance of getting a shot. This is Doreen Fletcher, and Doreen is an amazing jewelry designer. I didn't know it at the time, but she is the person who designed the jewelry for the Black Panther and the Wakanda films. And
Well,
she's an amazing talent. Now, the elements, how I put them together, this is black soybean powder. It's the same type of powder you use to put a temporary color into your hair, like for Mardi Gras type events, and it washes off like that. And I never script anything out. So right before this shot, I looked at the color scheme and I saw that highlight on her face and I saw that little brown coming through the black, and I knew outside I had leaves that had the same color value. So I went outside, brought some leaves in, threw them on the posing table, and told her, "Here, hold this," and that's how this shot happened. Same design. Now, with this, initially when I started this project, any project that I start, the first two or three people are always the ones that come up with just the mediocre shots because you're still trying to figure out the tone of the project. This particular shot, I ran out of the powder that I used to color the bodies. Black code is not about the old black codes of the South that prevented it was like let's put it this way: a modern day black code is driving while black. That's a black code if it was in modern times. My black code was just about shape and identity, and I wrote them out. My code defined how does this black space or this black body fit in a white space. And believe it or not, that's a white background behind everybody. But just by manipulating the light, and I didn't change it in post-production, I just moved it away from the white background and it dropped it to a gray, and it can even drop it to a completely black background. And because when I learned how to use light, I learned how to use light from a singular idea of one light. And I only use one light for anything I do right now. I don't go past one light. And I use reflective panels. And the first time I exhibited this work, it was in a building, and the building had the appearance of being abandoned. It was owned by a local gallery owner, Steve Martin. And the problem I had with exhibiting this work initially is that I had to use non-reflective glass because the images became a mirror. If you look at this, you can kind of see the reflections at the bottom. So the first critique that I got of this series of images, uh, they saw it and they said, "We love the images, but you were able to, the viewer was able to see themselves in the frame because they were reflecting with the image." So I'm gonna scan through this. This is again the Black Code series. I attempted something different in the middle frame that was printed first on a gray background, and then I poured wax on the top of the paper and cracked it, and then I photographed everything together and seamed it together like that.
you're not afraid at all, Gus, to experiment.
I it comes from that deficiency stage, which is no longer a deficiency. When your mom gives you a high-end camera, but you're lacking something else to create a complete studio-like photo, you try to figure it out. The experiment I use with the white styrofoam mannequin head, that's how I learned how to manipulate light. And I experiment a lot because I'm always saying, approach everything with a childlike curiosity. I think sometimes the one of the defaults of a adult or the disadvantages of growing older, we tend to put a halt on crazy ideas that might come out. And I experiment a lot because the only end result that it could work, it might work, But if you put too much logic behind it, you can miss out on sometime what I believe are good opportunities. None of these people are professional models. They just said, I like what you're doing. Let's go for it. And they trusted me. And I found when I used uh, vegetation that was in a stage of dying, when I used fresh flowers, it didn't work because it took over the pictures. So that banana leaf in the bottom right, everything is in a state of decay. And it because it's dying, again, this is one of my mentors, John Scott, that he told me if you use paper, never cut it because the spirit is in the paper. Fold it, crease it hard, and then pull it off its own grain because you don't want to cut the spirit of the paper. So when I approached all of this, that's why I used soybean powder. It wasn't toxic to anybody. And it was one light because I wanted them to feel like they were either being interrogated or the light from God was looking at them. That's the feeling because in that room there was only one light. It may appear as if a light is behind them, but that's just a vignetting of the corner. So one light, you can make it look like three lights. The one light lights everything. The vignetting makes it look like a second light behind them.
So you have the gift also, Gus, which is great, to listen to all these different mentors that you had, to
Yeah.
listen, to absorb, and it becomes part of who you are.
Yes.
And then it gets portrayed in your photography. It's really a gift.
I think one of the things in addition, look, sometimes I don't always listen. I'm a Gemini. I'm always in conflict with my damn self. Uh, Learning to listen more. Uh, but my mentors, I had amazing mentors, both men and women. And each one of them taught me something different. Most of the women taught me the sensitivity of photos, how to approach, how to act, and how to just see beyond the obvious. Men taught me more of the technical and the structures. The women knew it as well, but their approach to photography was more along the lines of approaching it from a feminine perspective. There are times I photograph, like when I photograph men, this is going to sound odd. I'm a straight man, but if I'm photographing a man, I'm I have to sometime assume I look at them as if I was a woman, not lusting after them, but I have to look at them differently because if you look at them as a man, you're going to photograph them one way. If you look at them from the aesthetics, I'm a woman looking at this guy to get a beautiful shot. The end results are different and
Mm.
it doesn't affect me. My manhood is not affected if I say, let me channel my feminine energy into this camera to get something beautiful, because in the end, his image will be probably viewed more by women than men. So I start with that idea, photograph him as if I'm photographing him for women and photograph him as if you have an attraction to him. And it doesn't make me a gay man. I tell people I don't make excuses and I don't have to explain it.
That would be okay.
Yeah, but I'm only explaining it because of this lecture, because I I photograph everybody. I'm not a homophobic guy, it's just it works for me. So the 12 series gets a little complicated in its interpretation. The 12 series, I named it the 12 because I wanted it to have a sacred overtone to it. The very name tells you 12. Is he talking about disciples? Is he talking about something spiritual? No. Uh, Everything about this series was a reflection of my grandmother. My grandmother was a fair-skinned Creole-looking woman. She was a business owner. And when she died, I inherited her house fully intact. It stayed empty for almost 3 years before someone even went through the front door. My grandmother never, I don't remember as a kid ever going through her front door because she made everybody go through the alley and come in through the back door. And everything in the front of the house was covered in plastic. And when I first took possession of the house, I was in a very rebellious stage because I was like, I'm gonna fix her ass. I'm gonna fix her. So I remember getting on a 15-foot ladder with a sledgehammer. And that's when I remember physics. Because the sledgehammer was a like a 15, 20-pound sledgehammer. And when I pulled back on it at the top of a 15-foot ladder, it was a momentum shift or a gravity shift, and I fell off the ladder. But I do, and again, I say New Orleans is full of spirits, but I do remember feeling this on my face. It was like she was telling me, nah. That's what we used to say to each other. Nah, I told you so. And I do remember feeling that on my face. And because I have a nice fat stomach, I only fractured a bone right here, cracked a bone right here. And the
Mm,
doctor said if you didn't have that fat stomach, you would have broke at least 3 ribs. But
there
about
you go.
2 minutes before I hit the floor, the house was is a really old house, so it had those square nails with the slat boards in the wall, and it was stacked about 12 feet in the air. And I told the guys who was demoing the room, you guys need to move this stuff. Somebody's going to fall on it. And 2 minutes after I made that statement, I was the one who fell 50
Yeah,
feet in the air.
yeah, that's an interesting thing. I thought only Jews and Italians in Brooklyn put plastic on their couches and chairs. But
We,
knowing that you guys do it down there, that's good.
we grew up with it.
Yeah,
And
that's great. Didn't know
so
that.
this series is attempting to interpret my grandmother in 12 sacred modes. There are those people who just stare at you. There are those people who look away from you, but they're listening to you. You're going to see some interaction between, and it does have a biblical overtone to it. All of the raps you see, she drank a lot of coffee, and that's where I got that whole idea to use coffee and coffee filters in my work from my grandmother. These are her coffee, these are her king size sheets. So every time I would drink coffee, I would dump the residual coffee and the coffee grounds on her filter, again, in a state of rebellion. And because she never let me walk through the house. And I say, it's my house now, and I'm gonna do what the hell I want. And the more I did it, this magic started showing up. That's just a coffee stained fabric. And I spoke to another artist. Her name is Rukia. She's an amazing uh, Mexican Mardi Gras Indian, and she's just good with all types of interpretation with fabrics. And then she taught me how to stain it properly, and so I took her advice, and you'll see the patterns. It almost looks like a muslin cloth that's been painted, but it's coffee. And when I wrap them, they smell just like coffee. Now, with the younger people, I found it was intentional that anybody that had young, new skin, I put them in rough fabric. And the older the person got, I put them in softer fabric. And it was just a conflict, or I use the word conflict not in its literal sense, but the conflict on the eyes. You saw this smooth skin with rough fabric. And it intentionally makes her skin looks even softer when she's wrapped in burlap cloth. This is the only model that my son picked out. He saw her in the store, fell in love with her lips, and we asked her to come in and be photographed. So I'll let you guys look at this for, say, 5 seconds. I'm gonna keep my mouth shut because there's a lot of deception going on in this photo, and it's very intentional. So I'm gonna stop talking for, say, 10 seconds. So if you can see, no one has found it yet. The setup for this shot, it's actually supposed to be Adam and Eve. And because it's not biblically accurate, you see Adam wearing the thorns, he's carrying the burden, and Eve is wearing the crown. She's the one in charge. And the instructions that I gave them, I told them start wherever you want. If you want to start with your eyes closed, the other person's eyes have to be open. And every time I say the word change, change. So if you started like this and I say change, you went to this. But I gave Eve a different set of instructions. I told her when her eyes was closed, I wanted her to be gentle because it was at that mode that she was the most destructive. And in this photo, she's being naughty in this photo, but she has that deniability clause because that hand you see in the front is totally disconnected from her. Now I did it with light. I use a light to break a beam of light to make her hand look like it's by herself. That hand is the thing that's causing all of the chaos. And when her eyes open, she became this spirit. And again, you'll see it in another image that's coming up real soon. You're gonna see
Somebody sees Samson and Delilah.
Samson and Delilah. Ah, that's a different story. It's the long hair, no hair in this one. It's a different story. So a lot of those biblical stories I picked up from my mother when she went to school for theology. You know, I'm no minister and I don't profess to know everything about the Bible, but when she studied for her finals and her tests, I had to help her study. So I was picking up that same bit of knowledge and the stuff that I got from her, I dumped it into these photos. And this is two people who are total strangers. I gave them a different set of instructions. This is Wandela Edwards, and I forgot the brother's name. He'd kill me if he knew I forgot his name. He had the appearance of a marble sculpture all the time. And when she walked in, she said that. And so I told her, pretend you're Stevie Wonder, and I want you to close your eyes. And as you're touching this marble sculpture, I want you to interpret his features to me. And he agreed to let her do it. So she's actually in motion while I'm shooting this photo. And I wanted her to pretend like she couldn't
Wow.
see and she could only see him by touching him. Her hands became her eyes. Every session ended with this particular moment. I would tell them, okay, we're finished. The session is over. And then it was more to relax everybody. And I would wrap them in the fabric. And I told them, take your time. But I had a knot and a clamp on it that if they struggled, the knot got tighter. If they took their time, the knot easily came loose. And everybody who struggled found themselves struggling for a long time. But the people who just moved their elbow within 30 seconds, that fabric fell off. And it was called Free Yourself from Your Self-Imposed Limitations. And a lot of times when we find ourselves trapped, we panic. Like if I threw somebody in the water and they couldn't swim, they panic. And most people die of drowning because they panic. It happened to me. And again, I have stories that kind of show up in my work. I was in Laredo, Texas, and I jumped in a pool, and I was in the pool the whole day, but I was on the shallow side in the daytime, and I was being a rebel, went out at night, disobeyed the chaperones, and I thought I was on the shallow side, and I jumped in the deep end of the pool, and to this day, I knew I was dying because I think I went down 6 or 7 times, and the last time I just gave up and I stopped moving because I said, "You're gonna die, so stop struggling." And I remember seeing the water shimmering from my movement, and I saw a guy walking. It was this shadow, and the guy pulled me up like that and threw me on the side and walked off. I never saw his face, I saw his silhouette. And that's
Mm.
why I started shooting silhouettes later. It's all
Yeah.
written because I keep journals of all this.
Mm. The your lights, are you working with a continuous light source or a strobe?
It's a continuous light source. It's a LED light. Um, and it was a very inexpensive. Again, I'll put that in the bottom once you post the video of this moment. I'll put the brand. It was a LED light. It had almost 200 crystals, individual crystals in this LED beauty dish. And hold on one second. Is it on the floor behind you? I'll show it to you right quick. One thing with me, I don't have any secrets because when I grew up learning photography, I've met so many photographers. Oh, I can't tell you that because it's a proprietary secret. And I always said to myself, I would never be that kind of photographer. And I can show you everything I do. I can even tell you how to do it. But it's the spirit of the people that changes the outcome of the image. And this is that beauty dish. I don't know if you can see these little bitty crystals in it. And when it lights up, it's extremely bright.
Mm.
And it almost mimics, instead of mimicking sunlight, it's pure white, but it mimics that shimmy effect that comes off of water. When water is moving, it gives you that effect. And that's why I like this. And it's flat. And it's just simple. It's a simple LED beauty dish. You don't need anything complicated. And
Yeah.
I find the models respond better when the light is continuous because they tend to blink a lot because they're nervous. Again, none of these people are professional models. And here's Eve again. This is her showing up in her true identity. And I only photograph images with the snake in the winter time because the winter time makes the snake move slow when it's
Right.
warm. And we photograph the snakes in the winter time, and I turn on the air condition to make it extremely cold. So Sean was freezing in this shot, and I use an LED light to control the snake. So you put a LED pointer on the end of a stick and hold it over the snake, and he's literally following the LED light. That's why his tongue is flickering. And when the belly, you want the belly of the snake to go up. That's how I got the contrast. Right. Again, this is that same part when strangers meet. I had that component built into it because my grandmother was a businesswoman and she only let her minister and her insurance guy through the front door. Everybody else, she treated them like a stranger and you had to go through the back. So that's that part of her life that shows up when two people who don't know each other and they only meet right before the session. And I told them the women know who they're going to be photographed with. I give the women the liberty to pick the guy that they're going to be photographed with. The men are always in the dark. And as soon as they meet, I say, y'all have to start shooting within 15 seconds of looking at each other. And the women are always comfortable. The men are always concerned because they don't know what kind of woman they're going to meet until they walk into the room. And this was me. I worked at a school. It was all Catholic school, predominantly white. And this was me in rebel mode. I was like, well, I don't see any black faces in being represented as saints. So I went and reinterpreted everybody with a dark face and wrapped them in sheets with the coffee. And I made my own set of saints. All right. I'm gonna fly through this a bit. Now, the only addition to the light is a piece of plexiglass. Um, I use plexiglass to redirect light. So I'll paraphrase this. Right after Hurricane Katrina, I didn't want my son to look at any negative images that I had taken. I was shooting pictures for FEMA. I did a lot of flyover shots of Plaquemines Parish and Tangipahoa Parish, and the images were terrible. And I wanted when he grew up that I could show him some images. And these came out of that. Tell my feet I made it home. I like this image because it's generational. You can see the different ages through the feet.
Yeah.
You can see the older guys with the younger guys. You can see everybody just having a good time. In this shot, there's a complete band. If you take your time, there's a drum, there's a trombone, there's a trumpet, everything, the tuba, everything that you need to make a second line band is embedded somewhere inside of this shot. This is a lunch break. It's a perfect time to tell your feet you're about to make it home. She was on lunch and I asked her, could I take the photo? And she said, sure, not a problem. It's the cover. I have at least 8 to 9 books already designed, just waiting for a publisher to call me right now because they're done. And, I can, my whole idea is to keep it all under one umbrella, but have it under each category would be its own book. So Tell My Feet can actually be a whole 100-page book with the same theme. This is a graduation, and I show you how extreme New Orleans is. This is the feet as it celebrate for graduation, and these are the same feet celebrating for a funeral. This was a funeral for one of our esteemed photographers, Mookie Square. And the men decided that they were going to march separate from everybody else in the middle of the street. So they formed this line on the sidewalk on both sides of the street, and they just spaced themselves. It was unscripted, unrehearsed, and they just started coming up the street. This is one moment I wish I had a videotape because they sound like a
Hmm.
military army hitting their feet, hitting that floor so hard. And this is Mardi Gras, and you'll see it. This is the end result of a conversation with a gentleman who had retired. And when I asked him, so, hey, before I left, I said, what did you do all of your life? He said, I shine shoes in the Fairmont. And as soon as he said it, I looked down and his shoes were perfect. They were perfect. It looked like an old person being taken care of. And he said, well, why are you photographing my feet? I said, because your feet actually become you. And this is at a yoga. Now, this if this photo had a scratch and sniff effect, it was funky in this room. It was terrible, man. Right? This is the project coming up, and again, I'm gonna speed through them because I have a good bit of images left. This is a project where I wanted to introduce the people who were coming into New Orleans after Katrina and introduce them to the people who were already here. Because gentrification was just starting to plant its little ugly roots in the city. And I photographed one person every day. I did it from 2013 to middle of 2018. And the numbers you see represents the year. So that's New Orleans People Project, NOPP, 1/4 is 2014. On this particular page, you'll see 2013, 2014. And as I go along, you'll see numbers, but this was the early years. This was the first 2 years. No one was, I didn't make a public announcement except twice when I wanted to have a particular group or a specialized group come in. These are all Mardi Gras Indian chiefs with the black mask in Indian tradition. They're all chiefs. And I really love the fact that I was able to get all of these guys in. This was from a magazine award show, and I was given a few minutes. So as soon as they got their award, they walked through the hall, sat down, and you have 2 minutes. Show me who you want me to see. That's usually what I ask people when I take their pictures, to show me who they want me to see, and you get it. This was another project that I really, really enjoyed. This was the women from the Nation of Islam. And initially, when they first showed up, they thought we were going to do traditional studio like work until I put on music and I told everybody, I just want you to dance. And this is the one time my son actually worked with me, and his only job was to change the color of the light behind each person as they came in. This is when we went from a one light setup to a two light setup, and the second light just lit the background. It was the same white paper, but with a gelled light on it, and it was an LED also. What I do, the greatest honor that I take from this project, and I don't think it was intentional, and I hate to say this. I am honored when what I'm about to say, I'm honored when it happens, but I'm saddened also. So, like for example, the sister in the middle with the Bayou shirt on, that's a good friend of mine, Dwana McKeeba. She just recently passed away last month. She was really important person in our community. I miss her so much. And what's been happening that when someone passes away and they've been photographed with the New Orleans People Project, it ends up on their cover of their program. And I'm honored, man. It's just, oh man, I'm honored because I remember that I'm in that picture. I'm in her eyes. Every one of these people, I'm in their eyes. If you zoom in on it close enough, you could see my silhouette. So it goes from remembering this moment to well, to seeing that cover, and I'm both honored and I'm both saddened by it at the same time, you know. And I love shooting couples. Couples are amazing. They will just do some of the craziest stuff sometime. Like the top right photo, she actually jumped on his back and wrapped her legs around his body. And the bottom left, I think they were just meeting. If I That's Miss Althea's daughter, and I love the way he hugged that young lady. It was just so tender. It was like it was very intentional the way he did it, and I remembered that shot because he was really in love. And again, I'm gonna just slide through some of the images, and if anybody have any questions, just y-
Yeah, I'm checking the chat room.
ask me anything. I will answer any question, whether it's related to photography. You can ask me anything about me. I don't care. This is organic watermarks. This is the Hurricane Katrina portrait sessions. So these images started, the portraits, some of them started right before the storm hit. I was photographing people on my porch. These are all images taken on the front porch with just available light. After the storm hit, I started reinterpreting the images. If you see the image on the left, you'll see what appears to be some type of writing. This was the military spray painting the buildings, and the paint was on the wall after they checked the building to see if anybody survived or if there was any fatalities. And the color, all of the color is from out of focus dead leaves. That's what's giving all of these images the color. If you look at the image on the right, you can actually see right behind her, you can see the shape of a leaf. So it's one leaf on top of another leaf, and every time the color changed. And I was driving around and I decided I had a Volkswagen and there was an electrical outlet in a Volkswagen. So I built a shelf and I was going to houses, taking photos of the interior for insurance purposes. I put on a hazmat suit, went in the house, made it official, downloaded the images, didn't change the file name. So if they ask me if I altered the images in any kind of way, I can truthfully say, no, I didn't. And in the process, I was also photographing people and scanning the debris. And the color is a palette of leaves that are out of focus and then embedded inside of the images. And so the one on the right, there was a whole lot of dismantling of education and a lot of black systems and structures. People was trying to get away with everything. And so I did a series called Reverse Discrimination. So when you see the sign colored only, no whites allowed, that sign never existed historically. There's no such sign historically that it said colored only, no whites allowed. If you can find it, it's a fake sign because this one is a fake sign. And I embedded it in it. So I did a test. I would hang that sign in public spaces, and then I would go across the street with a 300 millimeter lens and wait for somebody to pass it up. And every time somebody who was angered by the sign, I would photograph the initial reaction. Then I would come across the street and ask them, what did they get angry about with that sign? And they said, well, read it, look at it. I said, that sign is historically inaccurate. And almost 98% of the time they went, oh, oh, okay. I say, you're not mad anymore? It's still a negative sign. I say, if it was historically correct, would you be mad? And I never got an answer. And that was one of those tests that I did. I used my photography sometime for social experiments. And that was just one of those social experiments when the city was up for grabs. And I just did that project. And again, you see the idea of Eve showing up. She's on the right side, photographed in front of a garage door with the sign 9/20. That's the date it was inspected. The bottom zero tell you there was no fatalities. ME is the initial of the group, and they checked it once. The right side where her breast is would be if they checked for animals, it would have been a number in that, but there's no number, so no animals, so there was no number. And again, the image on the left was created, the bloom, the halo around her head is the magnolia bloom, the flower of a magnolia that was blooming. And I embedded it in the photo as a halo. This is Erin Brownlee. She was a twin and she couldn't find her sister. So I photographed her twice And she told me a story how much she loved her sister. And the first thing that came to mind, the love was so perfect that they can hold each other. And this is one of those images that I'm sure everybody that's looking at it, if I don't say what I'm about to say, you swore up and down you saw hands in this photo. There are no hands in his photos. And so they're so joined together that I joined them together without hands because that's how connected their spirits are. And if you look really close, you kind of see some red veins on the left image. There's a red line that goes through the image. Those are the veins that are inside of the leaves that I use to create the image. And this is Tayari and Ronald. I deliberately put a pastel print on their skin because I wanted them to look like young warriors. Kids at that age, they were really not afraid of what was going on. They were not really aware of it. And I just wanted them to look like fearless warriors. So this is almost my interpretation of tribal marks. If you look at the little boy on the right side, you see that red line going through his forehead. That's the veins inside of the leaf. I was able to make everything disappear, but that pulse of that plant would not disappear. That red vein would not go away no matter how much I made it out of focus. It stayed present. And that's what you're seeing going across his forehead. This is when everything started coming back to normal, and I wanted to interpret how we were looking at each other. And I photographed people and I would split their face. So you're only looking at the right side of her twice, and then it's merged back together. And it's also a reflection of her image in reverse. It's the right side of her face in reverse twice. And it was called Reflective Me. How do I see myself when I'm looking at myself? The human body can do a lot of things, but the one thing that the human body cannot do, if there was never a puddle of water or reflective surface on this planet, we would not know how we look unless someone interpreted our face, because
Is
our
the
eyes
texture.
cannot look at ourselves with our own eyes. And this image represents the chaos. It has mixed messages going on. The people outside of Louisiana was looking at Louisiana like, oh, it was entertainment. They're showing the news again. The people are still there in the water. And I used the People magazine, move on, nothing here to see, move on, go. And you see fragment sentence out of order. The descendants of slaves are still being left behind. And you see that nursery rhyme, what's the singer? Sweet dreams are made of these. He belongs, and there was no place for him to belong. So everything is a mixed message printed on top of a leaf and a piece of broken glass. And this is one of my most popular images. I only made two copies. One got destroyed, and the other person is Leah Polk. I don't even have a copy of it. This is Miss Heavenly Johnson, and I was listening to Billie Holiday, Hush Now, Don't Explain, when I shot this picture. And we have this saying, talk to the hand, talk to the hand. And as Billie Holiday was singing, that phrase came to mind, talk to the hand. I don't want to hear it anymore. I don't want to hear what you have to say. And that hand was from a piece of African sculpture that I found floating in water. And I took it out the water and let it dry, and I photographed it. That's what you're seeing inside of her hand, a talking hand. And her name is Heavenly Johnson. The story she told me was that when she was born, her dad didn't know what to name her. And the delivery guy came with flowers, and he was from the Heavenly Floral Shop. And that's how she got her name, Heavenly Johnson, because he had heavenly florals on the cap, and that was her name. So every image, I know the story. One of the things, if you want to make a connection with street photography, you have to start putting the stories and the identities of the people that you photograph or the same thing, because when they see me, I'm the same guy. That's the guy with the black shirt, black pants. He's
Yeah,
always,
there you go.
that's what he looks like. And the sameness, that idea of sameness, make people comfortable when they see
All right.
you. So that's it.
Thank you very, very much, Gus. That was really incredible.
Wonderful.
You should try to peek through the chat room. So everyone is really amazed by your work and your commitment to what you do. Do you sell prints? Do you sell books?
We're
Anything?
working on a book right now, and I do believe one of the issues that I have now, I'm trying to make some of the images, I'm trying to tighten it up in a legal way before I present anybody's image up for sale.
Right.
I, I
Yeah.
have a master's degree in museum sciences, and I wanted to make it legal. I wanted to make when your image is on the streets, you won't get a phone call and say, "Hey, man, I saw your image in the gallery." One of the problems in New Orleans, uh, we refer to this whole idea of culture vulture, where folks take
Mhm.
pictures and then they leave and sell the image, and the person in the picture never profits or never
Yeah.
gets recognized. I don't want to be that person because it is a community and I'm part of it. And
Yeah.
I do believe that it is sacred. A person's image and identity is sacred. So we're trying to shore up all of the legal aspect of it. I will show the image, but I'm putting a pause right now on selling it. I'm anticipating that within the next year I will have my first book. It's going to be um, uh, tell my feet I made it home, but it's going to include all of the images from my street photography. And as of now, it's going to be a 4-volume series, and each volume comes out in one every year for 4 years. And the books are designed right now. It's just a matter of getting the funding. That's what I'm working on right now.
Okay. Any way we could help you, you just you reach out. We'll blast a GoFundMe page. Whatever you need to
Right.
help. We'll we're on board for that. You got to read some of these messages. Um, but it's really really beautiful work, and hearing your words to your images really really ties everything beautifully together because you can get your raw emotion. One thing I really have to thank Fred Husrell, who
Yes, Fred is the man. Yeah, he
yeah, I
can.
mean, he connected us, and so I'm really thankful, that. And there's one other story, the portrait of the young woman holding the guy, feeling like he was like a statue, a marble
Yes.
statue. I have to
Yes.
tell a story. My wife is an art historian, and she works for the Guggenheim Museum.
Okay.
And some of the classes she works with are young kids, and there was a young boy who was blind, but 8 or 9 years old. And what she would do is she would describe what the person would be touching.
Hmm.
And this young boy touches this piece of marble and he says to her, I can see it.
Yeah.
It was almost like word for word what you had described. So it's very, yeah, I mean,
I- I'll, t- I'll tell you another thing. So in New Orleans, we have a photographer. He's blind. He's a musician. He has 2 photography books. I have 0. He has 2.
Mm,
Basically, he learns spatial distance. So if I take a 35 millimeter lens and I know how wide it is in front of him, so I would take his hand and I would say, it's this
mm.
wide. And he used um he was almost like a dolphin. That's how he centered everybody in the center of that lens. You would start talking and he would just move and move, and when he heard your voice right in the center of this space, he just clicked the picture. And because it was an autofocus camera, that's one of the issues we don't have to worry about. We know it's focused because we can feel that haptic vibration in our fingers that says yes, or we can turn on the beep. So the people who assisted him gave him the camera and put it in autofocus mode. And the book is amazing.
Yeah,
Uh,
you have to send me when you think of it, send me his name.
link,
But
and I'll finalize it with this. I've taken AI now and I'm teaching kids photography the backwards way. We've all heard the phrase, "and the image is worth 1,000 words."
right.
So I tell them to describe the images that are in their heads and never take the picture, and do it from a photographic perspective. And then we take those words, use them with AI technology and create the image. And then they would have to go out and then create the real life version of the one that they created with the words. And it's been working out perfectly.
Great. Wow, what a great idea. So, Mr. Gus, we appreciate it so much that you came in, and again, we thank JR for saving our asses in the beginning there. Without him, I don't know what we would have done. But and Fred, like I said, and I want to thank everyone for coming in. And you can see, go see Gus's website. There's beautiful work there. And Gus, just keep us posted on the progress of your of the books.
Will
And
do.
we'll remain in touch. And like I said, if anyone has any questions, now would be the time. But if
Yeah.
not, I know this was a long night, but just incredible work. And we thank you. Everyone should know, June is going to be a very busy month. We have a projections on the 11th, the 19th, and the
Moving
20th.
a light. Just stepping off the frame. But I'm hearing you. I'm just moving a light right
Yeah,
quick.
yeah. No, that we have three more presentations this month. So just a lot going on. I thank everyone for coming in. I'm always asking you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. But with that, Gus, let me give you, once you get back into the frame, the last word for the evening as we sign off. Once he gets back. Fred, thank you so much.
Sure, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, really there's so many wonderful photographers that it's just impossible to know everyone. And Fred's one of those. Gus is one of those hidden nuggets that
And how he was amazing.
yeah, just really special work. It's really a gift to
And his stories about all the pictures were wonderful too.
yeah, he makes it comes right home. So Gus, give us the sign off as we say goodnight.
I tell young photographers who I mentor, um, we are trained to take pictures with our eyes. I believe that initially, and I learned that when you start shooting with your heart, as corny as that sound, it will tell you when to go click. Because there are some images, and I'm emotional now. There are some images that should never be taken. When I photograph homeless people, the only thing that they have left in most cases is the ability to give you permission to shoot. So let your heart tell you when to do this. And if you're not clicking, listen, because if you listen to most people, they will give you the permission to take their picture. And that's what I do, and that's how I get what I get.
There you go.
You do
So-
great.
Thank you, Gus, and like I said, we'll be in touch, and any way we can help you with moving forward with the books, you just let us know. And
you.
the platform is open. Anytime you have new work you want to show or additional work, just reach out.
And for everybody, I can't see all your faces, but thank you so very much. I know I got some friends out there. I feel your energy. Thank you so very much for being out.
Great.
That's
Okay.
it.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone, and thank you
Good
very,
night.
very much for coming in, and we'll see you next week.